Hey guys, welcome back. It's late here, and I'm glad that we are back for another chapter of Charlie Bone and the Blue Boa. This is chapter 12, A Sorcerer on the Loose. Before we start, one last time, hopefully and truly, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment to let me know how you guys are liking the chapters. Please, 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 if you want to help out with the channel, join any one of the memberships, get exclusive content, get early access. Let's have some fun. Every little bit is used to help make the community better, help make the videos better quality, and I mean, hey, we all want that, right? So, let's get into it. Charlie had never been to Dr. Bloor's study. Nervous as he was, he couldn't help feeling curious. I've been there, said Gabriel, as two boys followed Billy up to the hall. It was when I first came here. I had to go and explain about my clothes problem. It's the sort of room that makes you feel as though you've done something wrong. I don't know why. Manfred and Zelda were already waiting for them in the hall, and gradually the other endowed children began to arrive. Dorcas and Belle, with Asa close behind, wearing a silly smile. Tancred, whose hair was crackling with nervous electricity, and Emma with a pencil behind her ear. Take that out, barked Zelda. Tidy yourself up, girl. What do you think you look like? Emma seemed bewildered until Charlie pointed to the pencil, which she pulled out and stuck in her pocket, smoothing her blonde hair as best as she could. Ah, here comes the great sculptor, Manfred announced as Lysander slouched gloomily into the hall. Cheer up, boy. What's that terrible? What's the terrible, eh? What's the terrible trouble, eh? You know very well, Lysander said grimly. Dorcas giggled, and Belle's awful eyes turned from blue through gray to violet. Manfred looked momentarily uneasy and then said, Billy, lead the way. You know where it is. Yes, Manfred. Billy crossed the hall to the door into the west wing. The old door creaked open, and Charlie, close behind Billy, found himself in the dark, musty passage that led to the music tower. They reached round the room at the base of the tower, and were about to ascend the staircase up to the first floor when they saw Mr. Pilgrim sitting on the second step. Excuse me, sir, said Billy, but Mr. Pilgrim didn't move. He appeared not to have heard Billy. We've got to go to Dr. Bloor's study, sir, said Charlie. Mr. Pilgrim stared at Charlie with a puzzled expression. So many bells, he said. Why so many? Who died? Was it me? Charlie was about to reply when Manfred suddenly pushed past him and, glaring down at the music teacher, said, Please move, Mr. Pilgrim. Now. We're in a hurry. Mr. Pilgrim pushed a thick lock of black hair away from his eyes. Is that so? He said in a surprisingly stubborn voice. Yes, it is. Move, Manfred demanded rudely. Come on. Now. His narrow eyes took on an intense, chilling look as he stared at Mr. Pilgrim. Charlie glanced at Manfred's coal-black eyes and remembered how it felt to be hypnotized. He longed to warn Mr. Pilgrim to make him fight that horrible, disabling stare. It was possible to resist Manfred's power. Charlie himself had done it once. But it seemed that Mr. Pilgrim had neither the strength nor the will to oppose Manfred. With a groan of dismay, the music teacher stood and whirled away up the narrow, curving steps. His footsteps could be heard clattering to the top of the tower as Manfred led the way to the first floor. They went through a low door into a thickly carpeted corridor, where Manfred stopped outside another door, this one paneled in dark oak. He knocked twice, and a deep voice said, Enter. Manfred opened the door and herded the others into the room. Behind a large, highly polished desk, sat Dr. Bloor, his broad grayish face illuminated by a green desk lamp. The curtains behind him had been drawn against the sunlight, and the book-lined room was plunged in gloomy shadows. Dr. Bloor beckoned, and the children shuffled forward until they stood in a row behind his desk. The headmaster scanned their faces with steely gray eyes, and then his gaze came to rest on Charlie. I want to know who is responsible, he demanded in a cold voice. Charlie's legs felt weak. He hated the way Dr. Bloor could do this to him. He knew the headmaster wasn't endowed, but he gave the impression that he had enormous power, and that he could do anything he wanted, and that his will was so strong he could overcome anything or anyone. Children of the Red King, Dr. Bloor sneered. Look at you. Freaks. That's what you are. Manfred shifted uncomfortably, and Charlie wondered how it felt to have your own father call you a freak. All of you, shouted Dr. Bloor, and then glancing at Belle, he muttered, almost all of you. Excuse me, sir, said Zelda rather boldly, but do you mean who's responsible for the bells, the frogs, etc.? Because it certainly wasn't me. I got one on the head. Actually, it was a toad, and there were two. Charlie knew he was in serious trouble, but he still had an urge to giggle. I didn't think it was you, Zelda, the headmaster said coldly. I'm well aware that kind of thing is quite beyond you. Zelda reddened. She glared down at the line of younger children and said, I think it's Tancred, sir. I do storms, Tancred retorted angrily. Weather. Wind can make bells ring, sky darken, frogs rain, said Manfred. Not elephants, cried Tancred, whose hair crackled violently, his cape lifted, and a blast of cold air blew a pile of papers off the desk. Control yourself, roared Dr. Bloor. Tancred gritted his teeth, and Dorcas Loom began to gather the papers, putting them one by one on the desk. I know who's capable and who is not, said Dr. Bloor. But I want a confession. Do you understand my position? He got up and began to pace behind the desk. The people of the city know I harbor children with unusual and, in some cases, he glanced at Asa Pike, undesirable talents. They tolerate you because they respect me. We are the oldest family in this city. We can trace our ancestry back for nearly 1,000 years. He gestured toward the bookcases. These walls have witnessed alchemy, hypnotism, divination, metamorphosis, magic of unimaginable splendor, shape-shifting even. He coughed and lowered his voice. Apparitions. All at once, Dr. Bloor stopped pacing and swung round to face his victims. But never, 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 he raised his voice, never have the events in this building impinged upon the city. Never have the citizens had to suffer our peculiarities. But now, he banged his fist on the desk and bellowed, all at once, in a day that has turned to night, bulls have run rampant, bells have gone berserk. Can you imagine what it's like out there in the city? He flung a hand toward the window. The danger, the chaos. There have been more traffic accidents in 10 minutes than in a whole year. The mayor was on the phone to me immediately. Oh, he knows very well where the trouble is coming from. I think we know too, sir, said a voice. Everyone turned to look at Belle. She gave a wide smile, and her eyes changed to a brilliant emerald green. She said, It's Charlie Bone, isn't it, Charlie? Charlie's mouth went dry. He felt slightly queasy. I don't know, he mumbled. Liar, said Manfred. Coward, hissed Zelda. Asa gave an unpleasant snort. You can go, said Dr. Bloor, dismissing them all with a wave of his hand. Surprised by the sudden turn of events, the 11 children turned to the door, but before Charlie could reach it, the headmaster added, Not you, Charlie Bone. Gabriel threw Charlie a look of sympathy as Manfred pushed him through the door after the others, and then Charlie was alone with Dr. Bloor. The headmaster paced again, finally sinking into his large leather chair and clasping his hands together on a sheath of paper lying on the desk. He gave a sigh of exasperation and declared, You were very stupid, Charlie Bone. I had my doubts, but when I saw you all standing there, it didn't take me long to identify the culprit. I gave you a chance to confess. You should have taken it. Yes, well, but I didn't, began Charlie. You idiot, roared Dr. Bloor. Do you think I don't know what you can do? I'm well aware of the paintings you can enter. I know of the person whom you've so carelessly let out. Who else could cause this mayhem? There's obviously a sorcerer on the loose, and I want to know what you intend to do about it. Find him? Charlie suggested. And how are you going to do that? Look for him, said Charlie. Oh, brilliant, said Dr. Bloor sarcastically. Well done, he raised his voice. If this nonsense hasn't stopped by 9 o'clock tomorrow, then it will very much get worse for you. In what way, sir? Asked Charlie, clearing his throat. I'll let you know, said the headmaster. Your famous relations assured me that you would be an asset to this school, but so far you've been nothing but trouble. They're very disappointed, and I'm sure they'll approve of any punishment I choose, even if they have to lose you forever. Charlie shuddered. He thought of his father, and permanently lost, unreachable, unknown. Yes, sir, he said. Can I go now and start looking? You'd better. You haven't gone long, came the grim reply. Charlie whisked himself through the door speedily as he could. Once in the corridor, however, he decided not to return the way he'd come, but to walk further into the Bloor's intriguing quarters. Eventually, he hoped he would find a staircase leading to the attics, for that was surely where Scarpo must be hiding amongst the cobwebs and eerie empty rooms. Charlie trod softly over the rich carpeting in the corridor. He passed dark oak-paneled doors, portraits in gilt frames. These he avoided looking at. Shelves crammed with dusty books, a collection of small skeletons in a glass case, the head of a bear mounted on a wooden shield. Gruesome, Charlie muttered, and hastened on. Beneath the stuffed birds and bunches of dried herbs suspended from hooks on the ceiling, he reached the end of the corridor and climbed a narrow stairway to the second floor. Here, a brief glimpse showed him a shadowy passage where, in the distance, something horribly like a coffin stood upright against the wall. Charlie hurried up to the next staircase. This one was uncarpeted and creaky. At the top, he found himself entering the airless, gaslit passage that he and Emma had passed through on their way to find Ollie. The steps to the attic were halfway down, he remembered. A sound drifted towards him. Music. Not Mr. Pilgrim's fine piano playing, but a brass band accompanied by a harsh, quavering voice. Charlie stopped and listened. There was no mistaking the voice. Old Ezekiel obviously lived in this gloomy region of the house. Charlie cautiously crept forward until he reached the stairs that led to the attic. He had climbed several steps when something made him glance upward. There, at the top, something gleamed. A coil of thick, silvery blue rope. But of course it wasn't rope. Charlie could now make out a faint pattern of scales. Sensing Charlie's presence, a head lifted from the coil, a flattish triangle with black eyes and strange markings across the top. Strangest of all were the thin blue feathers sprouting from its neck. All at once, a hiss, like a gas explosion, erupted from the creature's mouth. Charlie backed away, missing his footing, and tumbled from the passage, landing on all fours, down, down, down. As the hissing snake began to glide down the steps, Charlie picked himself up and tore to the end of the passage. He had just begun to descend to the second floor when Ezekiel's shrill voice called, "Who's there? Who's upset my treasure? You better watch out, whoever you are, or you'll be dust." Dust, Charlie murmured under his breath as he leapt down the spiraling steps and creaking stairways. Nothingness, more like. Zero, zilch, no more Charlie. He had just reached the landing above the entrance of the hall when he ran straight into Mr. Wheaton. "What are you doing in the West Wing?" grunted the handyman. "It's out of bounds." "I was given permission," Charlie panted. Mr. Wheaton raised his eyebrow. "Oh? And who gave you permission?" "Dr. Bloor," said Charlie. After all, Dr. Bloor had commanded him to find Scarpo. "I'm looking for someone. I suppose you haven't seen him. He's got kind of a silvery hair and a beard, and he's wearing a dark robe and a little cap on." "It's you." "Of course, you little squirt. You're responsible for all the mess outside, and now I've got to clean up. Not to mention the elephant. Damn near killed me when I tried to move it." "What happened to it?" asked Charlie, who couldn't help being curious. "Vanished, didn't it?" "But its dung didn't vanish, nor its blasted footprints on my lawn. If I do see that wretched sorcerer, I'll damn well wring his neck." "Oh, I wouldn't try to—" began Charlie. "Get out of my way," growled Mr. Wheaton. "I'm sick of the lot of you, endowed my foot." And he marched off toward the west wing, leaving Charlie anxious and relieved all at the same time. Below him, the hall began to fill with children making for the garden door. The afternoon break had begun, and Charlie decided to continue his search outside. "What happened to you?" said Fidelio, as Charlie ran up to his friends. Charlie explained, "I've got to find the sorcerer before 9 o'clock tomorrow, or I'm dead meat. Worse than dead meat. I'm—" He ran his hand across his throat. Fidelio and Gabriel offered to help. "The woods?" suggested Gabriel. They waded through the thick undergrowth beneath the trees that surrounded the grounds, but the deeper they went, the harder it was to know if dark forms sliding across the tree trunks were solid or merely shadows of moving branches. So many resembled a tall man in a long robe. When the hunting horn called for them to come in for the last lesson, Charlie wasn't sure what to do. Dr. Bloor had set him a task. He would have to risk getting detention from the other teachers if he was to continue his search for the sorcerer, Scarpo. He decided to inspect the dormitories. There were 25 of these, scattered over 3 floors, and Charlie had only searched 10 before the dinner bell went. What should he do now? Surely he wasn't expected to miss his supper. He began the long journey from the 3rd floor to the dining hall. As he approached the hall, he could hear raised voices. It was very late, and he hoped he hadn't missed the first course. When he opened the door and stepped inside, the noise was deafening, and someone had shouted, "There he is! It's all his fault!" Charlie ducked his head, hoping to look inconspicuous, but everyone was watching him now. Someone had spread the news. Charlie Bone was responsible for the frog rain, for darkness, mad bulls, golden bats, and vanishing elephants. Worst of all, he was responsible for tonight's supper. As Charlie slid on to the bench beside Fidelio, he saw a heap of cabbage and a slice of stale-looking bread on his plate. Everyone else had a similar meal. "What's this?" Charlie murmured to Fidelio. "Trouble in the kitchens," Fidelio explained in a low voice. "We were going to have scrambled eggs, but one of the cook's assistants found the larder full of chickens instead of eggs. You can hear them if you listen." Charlie could indeed hear clucking from behind the door in the kitchen. His heart sank. After watching Charlie take his place, the rest of the table began to chew their bread and cabbage. There were mutters of disgust and sounds of ugh, yuck, ugh, all round Charlie, but Billy Raven, sitting opposite, whispered, "I actually don't mind cabbage." Then, from the drama table, Damien's smirk piped up. This food is disgusting. I'd like to stuff my foot down Charlie Bone's throat. Shut up, fatso, came Olivia's voice. It's not his fault. 'Tis you, wet cabbage. The rest of Damien's rude remark was drowned by Dorcas Loom, who shouts Charlie Bone should be made to eat slugs for the rest of his life. She followed this with a loud titter, and several of her cronies at the art table joined in. In Charlie's defense, Tancred made a remark that Charlie couldn't quite hear, but it evidently was so rude that it caused loud gasps of horror and astonishment. Dr. Bloor stood up and glared down at the room. He was about to speak when Tancred's anger got the better of him. Plates and crockery began to slide across the tables as a violent wind rushed round the dining table. Supper crashed to the floor, and members of the staff leapt to their feet in dismay. Enough, roared Dr. Bloor. Tancred Torson, control yourself. The headmaster stood at the edge of the dais, his hands behind his back, glowering at Tancred while the stormy boy calmed down and the supper tables gradually returned to normal. Now go and get a dustpan and a cloth. Dr. Bloor shouted at Tancred. You can clean up the mess you've caused. Yes, sir. Tancred slouched out of the hall, only just managing to keep his green cape under control. Charlie felt guilty. It was all his fault. Tancred was paying for his terrible carelessness in letting the sorcerer out. He was almost relieved when Dr. Bloor said, Charlie Bone, stand up. Charlie stood, knees shaking slightly, hands clinging to the table. You know where you should be, don't you? Said the headmaster in a steely voice. I'm not sure, sir, said Charlie. Searching, boy, searching. I have been. I can't find it, or him. I'm sure there's one place where you haven't looked, isn't there? He waited for an answer, but when Charlie failed to give him one, he repeated, Isn't there? A small shred of a voice. Charlie croaked, Yes, sir. Where is that? The ruin, sir. Every knife and fork was still. Every mouth was motionless. Every eye was on Charlie, and every person in the room felt glad to be themselves and not Charlie Bone. Then you better get out there, hadn't you? Doctor's voice was now a menacing hiss. Yes, sir. Charlie took one look at his pile of cabbage and left the dining hall. The bright sunny day had turned dull and damp, and Charlie shivered as he ran toward the castle ruin. It was one thing to go into the castle with a friend in daylight. It was quite another to go alone when dusk was approaching. The tall red walls were half buried in the woods, and when Charlie stepped through the great arched entrance, he paused to catch his breath, to make a decision. He was in a paved courtyard facing 5 stone arches, each one a different entrance into the castle. Which one to choose? Charlie eventually made for the middle arch, because he knew where it led. He stepped into a dark passage where small creatures scurried around his feet and wet slimy things moved under his fingers as he put on a hand to steady himself. At last, he emerged into the light and crossing yet another courtyard. He descended a flight of stone steps into a glade ringed by broken statues. In the center of the glade stood a large stone tomb. Climbing onto its mossy lid, Charlie stood up and listened. He hoped that from his position he would hear any unusual creaks or rustles that might give Scarpo's position away. But it was hopeless. Sounds came from all directions. The stirring of leaves and rubble, the sighing of the wind, and the continuous patter and scrabble. of tiny feet. Charlie jumped down from the tomb and walked through the ring of statues to a gap in the wall behind them. He waded through the brambles and nettles. He stumbled over the fallen walls and tumbled down hidden steps, and then he began to cry and call. Scarpo! Scarpo! Are you there? Please, please tell me. I'll do anything for you if you help me now. Charlie realized it was a bit rash, but he was desperate. Shadows moved across the walls, trees murmured, and birds scattered shrieking into the wind. Charlie looked at his watch. 9 o'clock. Homework was over. His friends would all be in bed. Dr. Bloor hadn't told him when to come back. Was he expected to stay in the ruin all night? No way, Charlie muttered to himself. He knew what sometimes stalked in the ruins after dark. A boy that wasn't a boy. Asa Pike on all 4 feet, furred and fanged, his eyes glowing a wild yellow, his spiteful snigger turned to a snarl. A running, hunting, deadly beast. Charlie began to retrace his steps. Plunging through the undergrowth, he reached the ring of statues quicker than he had hoped. He was about to cross the glade when he saw movement on the courtyard above him. Charlie shrank into the bushes behind a statue. In the dying rays of the sun, he saw something that made his flesh creep. A woman was standing at the top of the steps, an ancient woman in a long white dress, gray-faced, her flesh lined in a spider's web, her white hair hanging in thin strands over her bony shoulders. Yolanda, breathed Charlie. Belle. He wished he hadn't seen her. He wished he hadn't seen the gray beast crouching in her shadow. The woman's eyes narrowed. She seemed to be looking straight at Charlie, and then she walked away. As she moved, the beast followed close at her heels like a dog. Only it wasn't a dog or a wolf or a hyena. It was a gray thing with a crooked back, a long dripping tail, yellow eyes, and a snout like a boar. Charlie closed his eyes and held his breath. They're the same, he thought. Asa and Belle, both shapeshifters. No wonder Asa can't keep away from her. It was dark when he felt he was safe enough to come out of his hiding place. Even so, he crept every inch of the way. But once he was beyond the castle walls, he tore across the grass, flung himself through the garden door, tumbling into the flagstone of the hall as if he'd been poleaxed. The building was silent. Charlie dragged himself up to the dormitory and fell onto his bed. Any luck? Fidelio whispered sleepily. No, murmured Charlie. He thought dismayingly of the punishment awaiting him. There was no question now that he would be punished. How could he possibly find Scarpo before 9 o'clock? He thought he was too worried to sleep, but exhaustion overcame him as soon as he closed his eyes. When he woke up, he thought he had been having a nightmare. It was still dark, and at the other end of the dormitory, Billy Raven seemed to be muttering to himself. There was an awful smell in the room. Damien smirked, moaned. Billy Raven, get that ruddy dog out of here. It stinks to high heaven. More muttering, a pattering of claws across the floor, and then the door banged shut. Charlie closed his eyes again, but all at once a voice beside his ear whispered, Charlie, Charlie, are you awake? Grunted Charlie. It's me, Billy. Blessed was here. He says Cook wants to see you now. It's very urgent. And there we've come to the end of this chapter. You guys have been great. I hope you enjoyed. Had a fun time. So please, don't forget to like, subscribe. Oh my god, sorry. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. If you guys enjoyed this chapter, leave a comment. Love to hear how you guys felt about it, what you guys liked about the chapter. And, of course, if you want to help out with the channel in any kind of capacity, join any one of the memberships. You can find any one of the links on the main page if you want to even just donate to the channel. Every little bit helps to build this community up and build the channel to be better. You guys have been great. and I'll see you next time.